Welcome back to Tales from the PowerAge, and tonight we're going to take you all the way back to 1987 and the metal albums and rock albums that were released in 1987, which were absolutely amazing. Now, one of the things that we mentioned in the last pod was that there was starting to be a split in the rock fraternity between thrash and hair metal and glam metal. And for one moment in 1987, everyone came together. But more about that later. So, evening, guys. Hope you're well.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing?
Okay, let's crack on. Jam, over to you.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much indeed. Our pod regulars will know I'm a massive Def Leppard fan. I was an early advocate for theirs. And you'll find a couple of pods already. We caught them in 2023 at Wembley Stadium. We did a nice little tour talk special. And we've also done this album in depth, this album and tour in depth. So check those out after you've watched this pod and liked this pod and commented on this pod. But this record, for one reason or another, was a long, long time coming. And I bought the lead single, Animal, when it came out, and I adored it. Yeah, I bought 7-inch, went and got it. And I particularly liked the B-side, Tear It Down, and thought, oh, yeah, that's good. It sounds like it should. The album came out, and it was a pure Mutt Lange beast. It had been 4 odd years in the making, and Mutt's and Mark's fingerprints were all over this. And it was just immense. The single Animal, I absolutely loved. It was just such a top album, and apparently when they were making it, they were like, how many singles can we physically get on one record? And they were trying to do a Thriller from Michael Jackson.
39, wasn't it?
And they did, and they had so many singles come off the back of this, and it's made it such a massive album. The sound quality is just immense. I absolutely love the title track, Hysteria. And again, so many singles. Everyone will probably have their own favourite single because there were so many. It meant a lot to me. Boys, what were your thoughts on this one?
I'd just like to know which songs weren't singles from this album.
I don't know.
Most of them, really, wasn't it? But Hysteria for me is one of the greatest songs of all time. For a sort of semi-ballad, it's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Gods of War, brilliant. Bass line at the beginning. Armageddon, it best solo by Steve Clark by a mile. Fantastic.
Love and Affection wasn't a single. Gods of War
should have been.
Yeah. Well, they did a great job of getting the probably the best tracks off the album for singles, and then they did the 80s remixes as well. You got all the extended mixes, the nuclear mix, and all this kind of jive with each one. So, yeah,
I loved all that at the time. I really did.
Yeah, we lapped it all up.
Yeah.
Well, because the production's so brilliant, it's obviously so easy to separate parts out, isn't it? And because they were so well recorded, you could have an intro with just vocals, like on Armageddon, the long version, which I bloody loved. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, so we probably shouldn't go on for too long in other pods, but this album is an absolute stone cold classic. Can't be denied.
Yeah, it still is as well. So, excellent album, and I think we all agree with that. So next one, Jam.
Well, the next one's a bit more of a personal choice. I'm not expecting a lot of input from the boys. But again, Y&T, they were the first band that I saw under my own steam in '83, 3rd of December, down at Oxford at the New Theatre. I'd been to a couple of gigs, and I saw Y&T were playing, and I thought they were great. So that was '82. So this is 4 years later. They'd had a couple of, dare I say, dodgier records. They were trying to appeal to the hair metal side of things in America. They'd had a song out called Summertime Girls that ruled the airwaves of MTV, and it had videos of really lovely ladies and stuff in it, and it was great. This saw them return to, for me, a hard rocking proper record, and I absolutely loved it. You could say it's a rubbish cover, because I know Gappy will probably comment on it. But it is what it is. It is what it says, isn't it? And it had some hard rocking records that were totally the opposite of bubblegum pop, as I might have called the previous ones. But yeah, I listened to this so much. When I got it out the other day again to listen to it, unfortunately, bearing in mind we were 18 and there was a lot of going out at this time, my version of this isn't in a great condition, because obviously when I get in late at night, this is the go-to record I put on, and unfortunately the needle used to sometimes slip from my fingers. So it's not the greatest Nick record I've got in my collection, but I've played it to bits. Anyone got anything else to add on the old Y&T?
Were there any singles off the album?
Not that I'm aware of, but
No.
It wasn't a thing. It was just, there were some banging tunes, and if anyone's listened to this, they'll know. It had a proper production as well.
You bought a copy of it for me fairly recently, and it was probably in about as good nick as the one that you've still got in your house.
No, he gave you his copy, and
he might have done actually, yeah. But anyway, it's good. It's true. It's a return to the hard rocking Y&T from previous. It was in Rock We Trust before this.
Yeah.
That didn't go down too well in our circles, but this is a good album. Very good.
Cool, that's Y&T. So what's your next offering, Jam? And just a reminder for anyone watching, please like, subscribe, get involved. I know you do, but there are a few records that we picked that might be slightly controversial. But we all love this next record, to be fair.
I was going to jokingly say back to the mainstream. Now this one, multi-platinum selling. Oh no, it's Tigertailz. They look pretty. Now Tigertailz were a band. They were local to. Well, Stevie James, the lead singer, was local to us at this time, and there was many a coach trip run locally from Watlington around the area that would go off to London and all over. And for me, this record is all about the vibe. And one particular time, around the time, might have been before this came out, but I was about 18 years old. I had a ticket to see Magnum. I think it was Magnum at the Dominion in London. I couldn't go. It was Sunday night, and I was really not well. I had a cold, I had a cough, and I felt terrible. I think Gav and the boys are going. I said, I've got a ticket. I can't go. Sorry, I don't feel well. And I'm at home, and then it's about, I don't know, 6-ish, 6:30, and I'm upstairs in my room. My mum calls up, Stuart. Yeah, what? I go downstairs. Deal's at the door. You all right, Jam? Yeah, I'm not too good. I'm feeling a bit rough. He said, we're outside. The coach is outside. You coming to see the Tails at the marquee? And I'm like, I really don't feel well. He said, there's one space left on the coach. Come on, you know it makes sense. I went, okay. I remember grabbing my fags.
Easily led.
Grabbing my fags, my wallet, sticking my shoes on. Mum, I'll see you later. Off I go. And that just about sums up the time. Off we went on the bus. Off we went to the marquee. I remember they were absolutely outstanding, brilliant. It's such a great crack. Luckily, I had a bit of medication in the shape of a few beers. Great night out, and they were a really great hard rocking band. If anyone's watching this and they don't actually know Tigertailz, stick this on. It's on all your streaming services. You can get it on whatever, Amazon, Spotify. But they don't look. They're our version, I suppose, of Poison, but for me, a little bit harder edge. And some screamy vocals, some great. I love the drumming, nice, straightforward, proper, decent hard rock drumming, and the guitar. They were just really good. For me, this record adds some of the outstanding tracks for me. I'm sure Dill might add some others, but Shoot to Thrill, absolutely loved it. Living Without You, She's Too Hot is such a barnstorming, stomping rocker. And Hollywood Killer, love the beginning of Hollywood Killer. But yeah, really great record. I've listened to it. This does get back on my record player every now and then. It's not one of those that I've hidden away. I do really still like it. But yeah, boys, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'll come in for chip in first. I was just showing you this. As Jam had mentioned, we were part of what was known as the Crazy Coach Crew, which was ran by Steve's dad, the Chief, as he was known back in the day, and that was great fun. And as Gav's showing there, this was the original 12-inch EP that was released before the album. So that was on, I think they funded that themselves. That's obviously signed as well, and then released the album. I got this signed backstage at the marquee, and I wasn't necessarily in awe of Tigertailz. I was in awe of being backstage at the marquee. Because anyone that's seen the back of Dirty Deeds done dirt shit, or it's in the inner cover or Dirty Deeds, there's a few shots of them at the back of the marquee, and it just blew me away to actually be in that venue, and Gav's showing some promo shots from the time. So yeah, look, they were great days. We used to go to all of the gigs at the marquee, and this is the old marquee in Wardour Street with their old little backdrop under the marquee. A couple of pictures. Jay Pepper is the only one still in the band. There's just a couple there, and just to give everyone a reminder of what we were starting to look like. As I mentioned, it was starting to become between thrash and glam and cowboy boots, I was going more down the latter. And there's me in the marquee. I think that's circa about 88, but that's what we were looking like at the time. A little bit different to what we are now. But the album-wise, for me, it's on Music for Nations as well, by the way. So the same as Anthrax and the same as Metallica at the time. So they had a decent label, and the same as Poison as well, ironically.
Yeah.
They actually they famously played the marquee in between a band that we're going to cover a little bit later, and they did 2 nights, and Tigertailz played the night in between. I think, according to folklore, Tigertailz were the only unsigned band to be selling out the marquee, and they did used to sell it. It was absolutely fantastic. And when you're 17, going to Soho and doing all this stuff, meeting Lemmy and all the rest of it, they were great days, absolutely brilliant. And if nothing else, this album deserves a shout, because some of the best days of my life they were. But that sort of 87 to 89, in particular, the Marquee of Water Street.
Yeah, and there's some great tracks on there. I've always loved the last track, the ballad, "Fall in Love Again." To me, that always sounded like an Aussie kind of song.
Yeah,
like a "So Tired" type thing. But some great stuff on here. This is the picture disc that they did later on, which I think is a better cover than the one you're looking at there, really.
Yeah, but, it does look cool.
The back's pretty much the same, and that was their logo, still their logo to this day.
Yeah.
I had them painted on an acoustic guitar in my bedroom. Do you remember?
Yes. It was classic.
Great stuff. It's wholeheartedly there because it's part of our lives, and
it was part of our growing up, and they were great fun. They were brilliant days. So
if you have a bus going from outside your house to the marquee in Wardour Street, you're going to jump on it.
Yeah, and then dropping you off afterwards in the morning. Happy.
I always remember we used to lose half the bus because it had stopped somewhere on the A40 for everyone to have a wee, and the driver would just go, and half the bus would still be having a wee. So brilliant.
Yeah, they were. I think these were the pre-runner for many bands that I got to see at the marquee at the Wardour Street and Charing Cross Road when it changed, and Gav famously played there a few years later at Charing Cross Road. So well done, mate. Good. So thanks, Jam. Let's go on to the next set, which is Gav's created Special 3. So his trio. Over to you, mate.
Yeah. Okay. This one, for anyone who's not looking at the screen, is the Cult Electric. Now, this is the first time they kind of went rocky. I was aware of the Cult before, but I wasn't really a fan. It was too kind of gothy, but She Sells Sanctuary was what came out before this. My story on the Cult is a personal one. We were in Oxford around this time a lot, and I went into Oxford HMV, and they were blasting out Love Removal Machine. And I thought, what the hell is this? Because the production was really clean and kind of AC/DC, but kind of British as well. I loved it. So it's probably the only time in my life I've gone up to the counter and said, "What's this?" And he went, "Oh, it's the new Cult single." So I bought it there and then. I've never done that before, really, either. So this is the very copy. You got to love the artwork as well.
Well, the logo is immense.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So that, again, is an extended version. There is another Oxford story attached to this album, in that when they recorded Love with their old producer, they kept the same producer to do the next album, which was going to be the next album, Steve Brown, and went to the Manor Studios in Oxford, recorded the whole album, and then rejected the whole album, went to America and recorded it with Rick Rubin. So it could have been another very similar album to the one before if they hadn't have had that decision to go rocky. And I'm glad they did, because I think it's great. Obviously, there are very much AC/DC rip-off riffs, some of them lifted almost entirely on this album. But I listened to it again yesterday, and it's a properly good album. You can listen to it all the way through. The only song I really don't like at all is Born to Be Wild. Totally unnecessary cover. Rubbish. But the other singles on the album were Lil Devil, which is this is a nice gatefold jobby, and Wildflower, which is kind of a DC one.
Kind of.
Almost exactly.
Almost exactly the same.
Yeah. What are you saying, Gaps? Which
Wildflower?
Wildflower. Yeah. The same riff as what's
Rock and Roll Singer.
Yeah,
rock and roll
yeah. That's it.
You could sing you could sing those lyrics over the top, and you wouldn't know the difference.
No,
still classic. And then they went on to do even more kind of maybe still in the rock vein, but more polished with the with Bob Rock doing the producing on the next album. And so and the thing I liked also about it is we always mention any kind of exposure we had on TV to these bands. There was a live at Brixton Academy around this tour. I think the album had just come out, and the crowd were going mental.
Mental, yeah, I remember that video.
Do you remember they had a bass player? The bass player of the band played a rhythm guitar, and they had another bass player in who the entire gig just had hair over. Marshall t-shirt and hair over his face, you know. So but they were kind of growing out their goth quiffs and stuff, and so they were going from goth to metal, and it was so good. They were just looking brilliant, sounding brilliant, and totally the right direction for me at the time.
Yes, brilliant album. We absolutely loved it. I loved the album, but I only got into that after I'd got into this.
Exactly, that's what I did. Went back into it, yeah.
But I loved how we embraced it, because this was a band that other people liked at school, but they weren't metal, so I didn't like it, and it wasn't even rock. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah, whatever. It's goth. That's how it is. That's the kind of band that might have been at Glastonbury or something. It wasn't. That's
what it was like back in the 80s. You were a goth or you were a metaler. You weren't both.
It wasn't at Donington or at Reading. It was going to be, they'll be at Glastonbury. They're just like, yeah, whatever, indie, goth, whatever. And then when it's come out, and then you see the sound is just out of this world. I love the fact that we just went, what? I thought these were rubbish. Oh no, they're brilliant. I love the fact that it didn't matter. We weren't prejudiced against them. We didn't go, oh, we can't like them. It was like, oh, they've come over to they've come over to the dark side. They've come over to the dark side, yeah. They've come over to the metal.
Welcome to the dark side.
With the logo as well. The logo's so metal, isn't it? That's not a goth. That's not a goth logo. It's just,
brilliant. We lapped this up, didn't we? Brilliant.
Lapped it up.
Well done, Gav.
Next one. Okay, predictably, probably that I would be taking this one, the last Fish Marillion album, Clutching at Straws. Not my favourite sleeve for any Marillion album, but that aside, it was also not a gatefold sleeve for the first time. But a fantastic album, real kind of darker subjects of alcohol and drugs and the misery of touring and missing your family and things like that. But it's such a great album. It really was the perfect antidote to the misplaced childhood, where people thought they were going too poppy and too commercial.
Certainly for me.
So, yeah, they had kind of an odd single. The first one off the album, talking about the marquee, was Incommunicado, with the photo outside the marquee there. But it was very upbeat, and it was very kind of, I guess it was the most commercial on the album from the point of view of what the fans wanted to hear. But the rest of the album is much more kind of dark and brooding. They still managed to squeeze a couple of singles out of it, Sugar Mice and Warm Wet Circles. All of them hit.
Favourite songs on the album?
Yeah, they're great. I mean, it's a great album. Fish's favourite album with Marillion.
Yeah, we said that.
Yeah, he does. He occasionally does songs off this album, and hopefully when he does the tour, his final tour, he'll be doing a few as well. But they did the usual picture discs with everything, so I've got all of those if anyone's interested. But yeah, what about you guys?
I love the single. It's my favourite song, the first single, Incommunicado.
Yeah,
for me, that's Marillion's "Turn It On Again." Their sort of genesis.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
it's very, very similar type of tempo and vibe to the song. The video is brilliant as well because it's in the old marquee at Water Street, so that was sort of really resonating at the time as well. So, yeah, I like this album. It's good, Gav, yeah, interesting. You mentioned around the artwork. I never really worked out what was going on with the bar. It was quite dark, wasn't it? But
apparently it was a bit of a rush job, and they didn't really have the technology to make the illustrated characters fit into the photo very well. Fish wanted a version of this, which is kind of the world in a cocktail glass, which they put on the label, but that's what he wanted as the cover, apparently. But yeah, Blinding. If anyone hasn't heard that because they think Marillion are soft, listen to it. It's great.
Okay, good stuff. Next one.
My final selection is a a little band that some people might have heard of called Whitesnake, album 1987. This was a long time coming, and we used to even joke in contemporary period that where the hell is it? You know, what they keep promising. You keep seeing Dave Coverdale pop up on TV saying the album's coming out. He guarantees it. And then there's a 2-year gap, and the lineup completely changed from what we expected, really, because we were expecting the Slide It In American version lineup, certainly when they toured, which was, you know, John Sykes, Cosy Powell, there was Mel Galley for a time, Neil Murray. What we got for the album was John Sykes and Neil Murray. No Cosy Powell, he'd already gone. So they had Ainsley Dunbar, who's got a massive history of just about everybody you can think of, including Journey and Frank Zappa and Bowie, believe it or not, English guy. But then obviously when it came to touring, there was even more change. None of those guys were in the band, but that's another story. They resurrected a couple of old tunes, Crying in the Rain and Here I Go Again, for the album. But the main thing is they went from the English bluesy sound much more to an American hard rock, glam rock kind of image and style. And boy, did it pay off. Risky, but it paid off. You lost all the blues fans, but you gained half the world. Yeah, there were 4 singles off this album. And
a lot of that to do with the singles and the massively impressive Tawny Katane, of course.
Yes, I thought someone would mention her. Yeah, so impressive that Dave Coverdale married her.
Yeah,
briefly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was definitely of a time, wasn't it?
It was. It's interesting. It's not one. If I pick a Whitesnake album, this wouldn't be one that goes on the turntable. Generally, I pick up Ready and Willing in the main, but it's actually quite a good listen. You know, when you put it on, I saw Whitesnake. Gosh, was it last year or the year before? I can't remember now. I'm losing track of time. Doing their farewell tour, and they played a few of these songs, and it was good fun. You know, everyone was singing along. It was great. Gav and I went to this gig on the 30th of December, the night before New Year's Eve, and I think I mentioned in another pod, but I found a wallet that night and had £3 in it, which subsequently returned, and Gav and I got tickets for Def Leppard at Wembley Arena the following year on the back of our honesty. So there you go. Who says honesty doesn't pay? But just one thing you didn't mention, Gav, of course, the change in personnel, but there was also a change in branding as well. So
yeah, the
Whitesnake branding then changed from how it was before, and it was a completely different band and sound. But to your point, yeah, it absolutely worked for them. And from the MTV perspective, they were on it all the time. Those songs just constantly on MTV and on the radio too. So yeah, good album.
Even there was the touring band that were about to be that were in the videos, wasn't it?
Yeah,
which were basically silhouettes with just with loads of hair.
Yeah.
You know, but from my perspective, it's always been a shame that they couldn't keep Johnny Sykes, because he's fabulous, and he is fabulous on this album, and obviously his songwriting is amazing because he's co-written just about everything on the album.
Yeah.
So you know, it's a shame they still haven't managed to patch up, apparently. So yeah, that's not good. But
the Whitesnake thing, I was never a bluesy. Blues wasn't my thing, the blues thing. So for me, my two Whitesnake records, my go-tos, are Slide It In. And that feels, when this came out, that felt like a precursor that was like getting ready for, right, so it's still a bit bluesy, but quite rock. This is what we're going to. It's going to be Bad Boys. It's going to be, come on then, want to go for a ride? We're a rock band now, give it large. And interspersed with an anthem of Here I Go Again and Is This Love, which is probably, we often joke about the drumming for Tommy like Hans Aldridge for Is This Love.
Aldridge.
But it's got a couple of absolute banging ballads on it for the ladies. But the album, this has got my favourite all-time Whitesnake song on, which is Give Me All Your Love. I just love it. Whenever I saw them live, that song just used to make me go back. It used to get me really, really excited. I loved it. And Gonna Break Your Heart Again was my other fave. Those two tracks resonated massively with me as an 18-year-old. And I adored this record, and it's in my top 2 favourite Whitesnake albums. And it sold trillions, whatever you want to say. It sold so many units.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Gav.
Pleasure.
Right, we now go to the darker side of metal. Over to you, Gaps.
Well, what can you say? I mean, we were well aware of Anthrax because of Spreading the Disease and the Armed and Dangerous EP, and we were really looking forward to this album coming out. I mean, the cover's immense. It's absolutely fantastic. It always reminded me, and I don't know whether this was something they did on purpose, but the guy with the hat is out of the Poltergeist film, which is really dark. But this album, I mean, my abiding memory of this album is the first time I heard the song on the album, Among the Living, was in Gav's car. Well, it wasn't Gav's car; it was his dad's car, because his dad used to take us to the bus stop to go to college, and we were listening to Among the Living, and then me and Gav in the car doing the air drumming as you did back in those days, and his dad. His poor old dad. I mean, we got it turned up, and it's just absolutely immense. I mean, the first 4 songs off this album are probably the best 4 songs to start an album. Certainly a thrash album of all time. Among the Living is fantastic. You got Caught in a Mosh, which is the ultimate thrash metal anthem. Then I Am the Law. And then into NFL. But I mean, what a start to a record. The riffing of Scott Ian, it was very difficult to play along to. I mean, I was not budding, but I was trying to play guitar, trying to play bass at the time. I could play along to it, but it was very difficult. It was really tough. And the drumming's flawless, as Gav would probably go along with. Absolutely flawless. The production is so much better than the Spreading the Disease album as well. It was so good. And I think it was me, Jam, and Gav got to see all the songs played live in the 30th anniversary tour in 2017, where they played Imitation of Life for the first time. I think certainly the first time I'd ever seen it live, and it's one of my favourite songs off the album. One of the only songs I don't really like on this album is Indians. Most people really like that, but it's one of my least favourites on this album. There you go. There's the single.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, and there's a picture of Joey Belladonna, and he's made out to look like a real redskin. I can't remember where that picture is. Is that on the inside of there?
Yeah.
Yeah. He wore that at a gig though, right?
Yeah. He's Native American heritage.
Yeah,
so
I thought he would be.
If anyone is allowed to do it, he's allowed to do it.
There's just nothing wrong with this album. Absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. It's probably that's Danny Spitz, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pure metal.
The shortest metal guitarist of all time.
Yeah.
Went on to be a watchmaker.
That's right.
Brilliant lad.
Yeah.
So 1987 kicked off really big time for it. I mean, look at that. I mean, I'd never really seen anything to do with 2000 AD, the comic, had anyone else. And then you had this Judge Dredd character came along, and you had all the stuff about him in the I Am the Law song.
And the amazing thing is British. So you've got a band from New York, idolizing a British comic.
Absolutely. It's just immense.
I actually had the first copy of that, the #1 when it came out. The first, stupidly, I haven't got it anymore. One thing of interest on that, we did go and see Anthrax on the tour, and there's the ticket.
We did. I was going to mention that.
Well, I was just going to say, front stalls. Guess how much a ticket was for that evening?
£6.50.
£6 front stalls. Incredible, isn't it? If you wanted to go and see Malice and Testament, who were supporting that night, by the way.
Indeed, they were. Yeah.
You'd be looking to put another £6 on top of that with booking fee.
It was my brother's first ever gig.
Yeah.
My younger brother, Anthrax and Testament, and we were like front stalls, and he got me into Testament as well. And I'm going on to talk about them in a minute.
They were so tight, weren't they? They were so impressive. They still are, but
everything about them, especially they were so young at this time. They just jumped around all over the stage.
Yeah,
Hawaiian shorts.
Yeah,
did a cover of Living After Midnight on that tour, where they all swapped instruments. Absolutely immense.
But for me, the album, this was the metalist of metal albums because the guitars were so flipping metal. The thing about the album cover, it makes an absolutely banging backdrop as well, because it's looking out. It's one of those, sometimes you get album covers that's like, oh, what a backdrop. And this is one of those, it's just like absolutely immense as a backdrop. I've got to pick up on Indians gaps because there can be a lot of people I think they're going to comment below because the Indians, when especially when it's live, the start with the guitars, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and then suddenly, and it's so good, it's so metal. And I just need to put that on the car.
Yeah, I was hoping for a comment off that. Yeah, that's what we
so
want.
Good. So if you're watching the live from Chile, if ever you've seen an Anthrax live from Chile, I think it's live from Chile. There's an absolutely ridiculously amazing crowd with South Americans for you, and they just go absolutely crazy for that, and it's like nothing you've ever seen. But yeah, that was my. I love this record, and you kicked it off. Those albums on the songs on the first side are so heavy and they're so good. And
it's just you bang your head to the first one, you bang your head to the second one, you can't stop banging to the third one, and then the fourth one. God, if this album had come out now, my neck would be dead. I mean, I couldn't do it. It's unbelievable.
Such a strong album. It doesn't bear thinking about, but yeah.
And they're produced by Eddie Kramer, who's an old geezer at the time. He'd been working with Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Kiss. So that's probably why I got the job, because he produced Kiss.
Well, he did really well.
Yeah, he did brilliantly.
Great album. I've got Indians on 7-inch picture disc and orange vinyl. Funny enough, I should have dug those out. But
I've got orange. Yeah.
Okay, good. Next one, Gabs.
Yeah, and as we were talking about Testament, they supported Anthrax on the tour that we went to see. The album, both these albums came out in early '87, and we went to see them in November '87 together. As I said, it's my brother's first gig, and he got me into Testament. He had this album on tape. Alex Skolnick, the guitarist for Testament, was only 18 years old when this album was produced, and it was just absolutely off the wall, total thrash metal brilliance. It was absolutely mental. Chuck Billy had just joined the band, so he didn't have much writing credits on this album. But again, it's wall-to-wall thrash metal. If you don't like thrash metal, you're not going to like this. It's just so thrash. It's unbelievable. The standout, of course, being Burnt Offerings, which is probably one of the greatest songs of all time, certainly in the thrash genre. But the harmony guitaring, the guitar playing, the drumming of Louis Clemente, absolutely brilliant. Can't fault this album at all. Anyone on this one?
I've got one brilliant memory of Testament. The following year, Gav and I, Paulo and Spicer went to Germany to see Monsters of Rock in Germany, and Testament.
You saw them there, did you?
Well, they were added onto the bill, funnily enough.
Awesome.
And I'll never forget Phil Spicer, who was a good friend of ours, liked a bit of glam. And he was going for the David Roth look.
He loved glam. I doubt he liked Testament.
It was hilarious watching his face when they were on. Oh, giggle! It was hilarious. Absolutely. I don't know if you remember that, Gav, but that's one of those things that you remember at the time. It was just he was looking there with absolute disdain at the noise that was coming out the
Oh, poor old Phil.
That's
the riffology on this is just brilliant, and any guitar player knows the right hand technique needed to play some of the songs on this. Eric Peterson's one of the greatest rhythm guitarists of all time, and it's just so quick, so fast. Yeah, the production's not brilliant, but it is a debut album, so you can forgive them for that. Went on to do a lot more, but never really got to the heights that all the other thrash metal bands from the Bay Area got to. Unfortunately for them, but they're still going. So, yeah, absolutely love Testament. Brilliant.
I saw them supporting them on a Math a while ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And they were brilliant then as well. It seemed like they're on the way back.
That was the gig I had tickets to, and then had to go on holiday with my missus. Yeah, great.
I had to go on my own, but I still went. It was brilliant. But yeah, I know Burnt Offerings really well, because do you remember I used to have it on this compilation album?
Yeah, that's probably the first time we heard it, to be honest.
So I know that inside out, and then I've got into the album, but that one's still, I still know that one way more than the other.
Immense song.
It is a brilliant song, yeah. And they played it at the Roundhouse. So I was very happy.
That's a good reminder of your barbecuing prowess, Burnt Offerings. So whilst we finish with that, let's move on to the next one, Gabs.
Yeah, we're going to go slightly out of left field for this one. I know you boys didn't really get into Malice at the time. Great band. They only did really 2 albums. They did In the Beginning, which was the year before, and then me and my brother both got into it big time. But when this album came out, we were just so chuffed to bits. It's a brilliant album. Anyone who's not heard this album, you've got to go and get it, at least on Spotify or Amazon or whatever streaming service you want to listen to, because if you like heavy metal, you will not be disappointed by this record. It's 9 songs. Every song's a killer. Every song has got a brilliant guitar solo in it. And it was so good that Dave Mustaine actually chose Jay Reynolds, one of the guitar players, to be the new guitarist in Megadeth after Chris Poland left. Unfortunately for Jay Reynolds, he actually wasn't that good. And most of the songs that Dave put in front of him, he had to take away to his guitar teacher called Jeff Young, who happened to be on the next Megadeth album.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So Dave wasn't so pleased with Jay. He liked the look of him, liked the sound of him on this record, but he chose the guitar teacher over the protege for the next Megadeth album, which came out the next year. So far, so good. So what? But this album's brilliant. Sinister Double. It starts with brilliant. The title track's brilliant. Some amazing guitar playing on it, and one of the great things I love about a lot of heavy metal stuff is when you go to the sleeve notes, you'll see which guitarist plays which solo. I love that every time. Mick Zane, who's the other guitar player, it does some of the greatest guitar solos you'll ever hear. Christine and Breathing Down Your Neck are 2 of my favourite songs of all time. And if I put this album on now, I would listen to all of it because it is so good.
Okay, brilliant. Well,
and they went on to support Slayer, believe it or not, the following year when I saw Slayer on the Rain in Pain tour in 1988. They supported Slayer and they went down absolutely terribly. It was me and one other guy going nuts, and that was it in the whole crowd at Hammersmith Odeon.
Well, Slayer are notorious for the support bands dying, aren't they? Because everyone's just Slayer. Well, it's not fair.
No, it wasn't fair because they rocked the place and it was brilliant, but there's only 2 of us liked them. Never mind.
Cool. Well, you definitely would have heard the next album. So I've picked 3 albums that I still listen to, right? So I know we do all of these and we pick our albums and stuff and we reminisce on how good they are or the things that we really liked. But the 3 albums I've picked, I still listen to. I still listen to quite a bit. So the first one, of course, is Guns N' Roses. And Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. And this came out in 1987, as we've already mentioned, as you know. It came out on July the 21st, 1987. It was produced by Mike Klink. And as I said at the front end of the show, there was a time between 87 and 88 where the masses all joined together. Everybody that seemed to be, and I'm sure there'll be people that will comment and say, no, that wasn't true. I never liked GNR. Actually, everyone seemed to like GNR, whether you were into thrash,
everyone liked GNR.
Whether you're into hard rock, actually, whether you're into pop as well. Everybody loved them. They were, when you're a teenager, this is what you want, a band that's a little bit naughty, a little bit hardcore in a way. But do you know what? They produced and made an amazing album. I was talking to someone actually in the week just saying, look, we're going to be reviewing Appetite when we record this next week. And he said it's the perfect album. And actually probably is the perfect album. And for the time, it certainly was the perfect album. The first I heard of this was I heard It's So Easy on the Friday Night Rock show. I used to record that on cassette. And I heard it. I thought, well, this is a bit different. And I love the punkiness of it, the power of it, and the bit in between where anyone who's got the proper album, there is a bit of a swear word in between, but actually on the radio version is why don't you just back off, which was interesting because I didn't realise at the time. And we all luckily got to see them. Well, luckily in some parts and not in other parts of it, which is another podcast. We saw them at Donington the following year in '88. But this is just a super, super album. Welcome to the Jungle. It's So Easy, Night Train, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, Sweet Child of Mine, Rocket Queen. I mean, it's just endless. Absolutely.
It's not a weak song.
You want
no, it's not a weak song.
It's incredible.
No, there isn't.
It actually spawned, I think it was 5 singles altogether. I've got a couple of them here. So there's Sweet Child of Mine. I haven't got It's So Easy, which was the first single, as I just mentioned. Welcome to the Jungle. and Paradise City. And funnily enough, the 3 that I've got are the 3 that have been streamed individually over 1 billion times on Spotify. The album's the biggest selling debut album of all time, with over 30 million units shifted. And I think that says something in itself.
What, any genre?
Yeah, any genre. Biggest selling debut album of all time. Yeah, and interesting, I didn't know this until recently, but they'd actually written November Rain ready for this album. And the decision was made not to put it on the album because they'd already got a ballad with Sweet Child of Mine. And is there a better rock ballad than that song? I challenge you to say whether it is or not. Probably not.
It's not really a ballad, but there you go.
No.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. So thoughts on this, boys? While I just get another small piece of memorabilia off the wall.
Well, I think it is the best debut record ever. I've never been able to listen to this record when I've been driving, because I did it once when it first came out, and I was going far too fast, and I nearly had an accident. So I didn't ever put this on again. It's so easy for me. I had such attitude, and we actually got booted out of a house party once for singing along to It's So Easy, because just as the music got turned off, just as it got to the bit where you do a sing back, as Dill said before, why don't you just back off? And the Gaps will probably remember this, but
was I there?
The way that we actually sounded so violent and so abusive.
It would have been though, wouldn't it?
With such attitude, and we were just so into it. Why don't you just? And then it was like, whoa! It's like the world was falling apart. We had to get out of there pretty sharpish. I had the 12-inch. I bought the 12-inch of Welcome to the Jungle, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it had on the B side, it had Whole Lot of Rosie live.
Yeah, it did.
It did. It did. I remember that now.
I had it. I don't know where mine's gone.
Early doors, I remember listening out for Welcome to the Jungle in the top 40 on the radio, and they played it. And it's one of those ones, because it was early on, before they'd started shifting tons. We were in there from the beginning, of course, it's played on the Friday Rock Show.
Yeah.
And I loved it. The other thing, I know it's side G, it went G and side R, didn't it? Instead of side A and B, it was side G, which was all about the drugs, and side R, all about the ladies. And every single song for me is a world beater. Even the one with Rocket Queen with the background noises that were on it.
I love that.
Rocket Queen's my favourite song on the album.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore that song.
For me, it was Think About You. I just loved, and of the obvious ones, your Night Train, and every song, Night Temp, Mr. Brownstone, is just it was
Slash is on fire on this record.
Yeah.
Yeah, he replaced Tracy Guns. I don't know if you're aware of that, but Tracy Guns was the original guitarist who then formed LA Guns.
Yeah.
And Slash replaced him. Obviously worked well for G&R, but an interesting fact if you didn't know that. Also, just in terms of the production, originally they'd considered Paul Stanley of Kiss fame to produce the album, but he was trying to change Steve Adler's drum kit massively, apparently, and they decided not to go with him. They had considered John Mutt Lang, but the record company thought that might work out to be a little bit too expensive. And they went.
They were probably right there.
They went with Mike Klink, and it was a masterstroke.
Mike
did a great job.
Mike did a good job.
What that would have sounded like with Mutt Lang, though, at the country.
It wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked because this album's so raw. It's just
it's I know,
so
but it's
good.
It's so raw, but it's really well produced. But it is.
Oh, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
But that totally ties in with their punk kind of.
Yeah, it's so.
Doesn't it? You couldn't take that out of the band. The band wouldn't exist anymore.
No,
so,
I dread to think. Wow, imagine
whoever that was.
Yeah, imagine a world with a Mutt Lang appetite. That would have been nuts.
No, it just never worked.
Sanitized it too much. They sounded like they're in the village hall practicing next door, but in a high fidelity way. You know, it sounded totally raw and and spontaneous. It was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic album. 10 out of 10 for me. So that's Appetite. Let's go on to my next offering. This one's an American import. It's a copy. You can tell that with a little clip in the corner. Now, Dokken, interesting band. They released a single, Dream Warriors. I think it was about February of that year. The album wasn't released until November. My first sort of memories of Dokken were that a number of the guys at college were really into these. Paulo was a big fan. Rodham was a massive fan. Loved the guitar playing of George Lynch, obviously. And one evening we were all stood at platform at the railway station off to see Overkill at Hammersmith Palais. So there was a load of fog. We didn't get to go, and we sped off in the cars to the cinema to go and see Dokken starring in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's what the Dream Warriors was on, and that was fantastic. The following year, Dokken supported AC/DC at Wembley Arena, and they did 4 nights there, and I was lucky enough to see Dokken 4 times, and also lucky enough to be given a pass and go backstage. And this was after the gig, and I think everybody had gone, but I borrowed the dressing room sign for Dokken, which was proudly displayed in my bedroom back at home for a few years after that. Dokken's dressing room. I wish I still had
brilliant.
That was
you gave it back then, did you? Because you borrowed it.
Well, I haven't got it anymore, so I must have done. But I did.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, good. Well done. Well done.
But anyway, nice piece of memorabilia. But look, this is a super album. If you've never heard it before, I'd really encourage you to listen to it. It sounds brilliant today. Sleepless Nights, beautiful song, great riff, absolutely fantastic. Burning Like a Flame was a great video to that as well. It's just a really good album, start to finish, and it comes in I think something like 63 minutes, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's a long album. It's about 13 songs, isn't it?
Wow.
Produced
by Nick Kerman. Now, Nick Kerman has been around a long time from Walthamstow, East London. He produced FM Tough It Out.
Yeah.
I think he did some Dexys Midnight Runners. He did Britney Fox, a couple of Queensryche albums, Scorpions. He's done Hall & Oates, Peter Gabriel. I mean, all manner of Cannibal Corpse, believe it or not, all manner of stuff. But he did an absolutely brilliant job on this. I can't say enough about this album. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. Kiss of Death, Prisoner, Standing in the Shadows, just great. Yeah, check it out. Any other thoughts on this, guys? I didn't know you guys were so much into Dokken.
Not for me.
Not back in the day, but you've got me into them recently, and I've bought pretty much all their back catalogue. Dream Warriors for me is the best song on this album. It's still not quite as good as Under Lock and Key, I don't think, which is my favourite Dokken album. But yeah, they're one of the bands that I wish I had got into back in the 80s and gone to see, like you did. Because yeah, I really would have really been into these boys back in the day.
They were excellent. And there's a little Burning Like a Flame picture disc, which is pretty cool. They look cool as well, didn't they? They were awesome. Right, cool. That's Dokken. Let's go on to the final one. Bit of a theme here. All of my picks were American this week. Permanent Vacation. This is a comeback album from Aerosmith. And they weren't particularly big in the UK, but this actually was quite successful over comparatively to other albums. Some brilliant songs on this. Hangman Jury, Dude Looks Like a Lady, which everybody knows. I think everybody in the world knows that song. It's apparently written about Vince Neil from Motley Crue. So whether it is or not, I don't know, but apparently. Angel, Ragdoll. It's a perfect summer album in my mind. It was released 25th of August, 1987. Comes in at 51 minutes. Look, just a great album. And again, this is one I listened to. I know, Gappy, you came over. You were over in not last summer, the summer before, and we had this on in the afternoon. You go, actually, this is such a good album. So, yeah, it's brilliant. Brilliant for the summer. Great for a barbecue. Great in your car with the windows down, when the sun's shining and your sunglasses are on. And was a real comeback album for Aerosmith. They've been struggling for a few years. It was the lineup back together, and this was the album that preceded Pump, of course. And they were on MTV all the time as well, which was giving them lots of airplay. And in and around that time, they teamed up with Run DMC and Walk This Way as well, which again catapulted them into modern day stardom. So, any thoughts on this one, guys?
Yeah, for me, I knew Sweet Emotion. Was that off of Axe Attack?
Toys in the Attic, but I think it was on Axe Attack as well.
That's me.
The album was Toys in the Attic.
Except that one song from back in the day. So I wasn't a massive Aerosmith fan, but I bought this on release. I honestly don't know why I did, but I did. I must have heard something on the Friday Rock Show, because that's what we did. I must have heard something. I bought it on release, and I played this to bits. when it came out that year. I wasn't a big Aerosmith fan, so I didn't have any of their back stuff. I didn't have the 70s like vibe thing going on. But Magic Touch, Ragdoll is an absolute banging. But throughout the whole album, the backing vocals, which are tracked, obviously it was Steve Tyler's, the backing vocals are brilliant, and it carries it all through so beautifully. And I love decent vocals when you've got his lead vocals and they're backing it up with his, but it just sounds really, really great. And even at the end, Movie, brilliant at the end. I mean, I have no idea why you're probably going to know which track I'm going to mention, which is rubbish. They've got I'm Down on there, a cover of I'm Down. Really, that is what that's doing on there. I've no idea. Everything else about that record is absolutely spot on, and yeah, I really, really liked this. And it's weird because in hindsight, it's the only Aerosmith album I've ever really actually liked. I didn't like any of the others really, and I even saw them a few times and that. But this for me is just this one record. This band, that one record is brilliant, and I've never caught on to any of the rest of it, which is weird, but that's how it is.
I can't remember, Jam. Was it the tour for this album, or it was this one? We've mentioned this.
No, just that it was the following year, and the Pump album wasn't so good. We did mention this, I think, on a pod, but yeah, you and I had tickets to see them at Hameo. We got there, and we both looked at each other and said, "Do we really want to go in and see Aerosmith?" And we looked at each other and said, "Nah, let's sell our tickets, get back to the pub, and get pissed." So we did that.
We did that instead, yeah. We got a fiver each for the tickets, which was pretty good.
Yeah,
it was £5 each.
5 pints each.
But it was back then.
Those were the days.
Excellent. Well, that's our 12. So I hope you're going to think about what we picked, and you're probably thinking about your own picks, your own albums that either we didn't choose or you would have liked to have put in. Like I said, please comment, like, subscribe, get involved. Gav, take us through the best of the rest from 1987.
Well, we got some arguably good ones in here, hence the best of the rest. But the Motorhead, I really like that album. It's even got a silly Michael Palin skit at the end, I think. Then they had
brilliant, but it was just nowhere near as good as Orgasmatron, unfortunately.
No, it probably wasn't. And then the House of Blue Light, which was the second reunion album of Deep Purple.
Again, not as good as Perfect Strangers.
No,
unfortunately.
I guess some people will be upset we didn't put Kiss in because they were going through a really successful era with Crazy Nights, especially with that single in the UK. And Michael Schenker teaming up with a brilliant singer. Jam loves this album.
That was so nearly that. I wanted that. If I'd have had 4, that'd have been my 4th, but I couldn't squeeze it in. Needed the Tails in there. So yeah, that one and Alice Cooper for me were 2 massive records that year. I loved them.
Yeah, the Alice Cooper album's brilliant. It really is good.
Oh, that was after Constrictor. That was brilliant. I saw that him live at Wembley Arena with that tour. And it was brilliant. I had the T-shirt and everything. Super.
And White Lion as well.
Yeah.
Pride. Never particularly great album covers, but brilliant records.
Yeah, massively underrated White Lion.
Yeah,
100%.
Lyrically, musically, massively underrated. Part of that is because Mike Tramp was such a good-looking fella. I think that sort of turned people away from them in some respects and didn't make them as serious as maybe they should have been. But they're super, really, really good, and that's a great album.
And then a bunch more. If I had 4 choices, I would have had Halloween, Keeper of the Seven Kings in there. But I guess we're keeping our powder dry for potentially another year. But that's an epic album, and that didn't sound like anything I'd heard before at the time. Completely brilliant music, fast, melodic, amazing drumming, bless him. And then we got Motley Crue, Girls, 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 Man of War, which I really like this album. It sounds dated as hell now, but there's a couple of classics on there that we were aware of at the time for some reason. And Gary Moore, it's a great, solid album. It's probably one of his most solid albums, kind of a tribute to his Irish roots. Yeah, really, I mean, a bit poppy, really, electric drums and stuff like that, but the songwriting was excellent.
And his last metal album.
And then Faster Pussycat, kind of Dill's wheelhouse. But again, that was on the compilation album I was on about earlier. Yeah, good stuff, very much kind of solid Hollywood glam. And then Dill wants to tell you all about the other one.
Well, I think it's worth
The
just giving
start of grindcore.
Yeah, I mean, this was an important album, right? There'd be no Slipknot without Napalm Death and many other bands. These guys were, well, they were pioneers of their time. Now, not a band I was overly into. I picked this up in a record store for $9.99, a local record store, a couple of years ago. Suffice to say, with a hype sticker and the fact it's one of Earache's first ever records that they put out, means it's worth a little bit more than £9 and something.
I bet.
But yeah, look, Tommy and I, who were at uni together, got pretty friendly with Napalm Death, funnily enough. Not in a musical sense, that we used to go and drink with them in Costermongers in Birmingham, and they'd all come back to our house and party away, and we got really quite friendly with them for a couple of years. And funnily enough, me and Gap saw Napalm Death supporting Volbeat a couple of years ago in Cardiff, which was great to go and see him. I think I'd only seen him once before at Edwards No. 8 in Birmingham, but I find that much easier to listen to now than I did in 1987 and 1988, funnily enough. Doesn't seem as hardcore now, but yeah, very, very important album, and British as well. So, Jane, if you're watching, well done, good job. Yeah,
respect.
Good. Right. Gaps, if you just give us a quick summary of the 12 that we picked and the 12 that we curated. For all the people that are watching, please like, subscribe, get involved, and we'll go to the top 5 shortly.
Yeah, and as usual, as you can see from all the records we've produced, we've gone for the very mellow to the very, very metal. There's something for everyone in this lineup. Absolutely, anyone who's ever picked up a guitar and been into any sort of rock music, you will find something in this 12 that will really, really resonate with you. I mean, it's just great stuff.
Yeah, it's a real mix. So thanks, Gap. So let's go to our resident disc jockey. Jammo's ready to go. So let's see if we get people really excited or disappoint them this evening. You give the guys a top 5.
Thank you very much indeed, Dill. Right, so this week's top 5 for 1987 killer albums from the PowerAge. Here I go again. It's the mega selling 1987 from Whitesnake at number 5. They may have gone incommunicado, but we still recognise a superb album from Marillion at number 4 with Clutching at Straws. Eithel Nickelfesson? No, Mubla Nickelfesson. Nice effing album. It's Anthrax with Among the Living. At number 3, the official killer albums of 1987 from Tales from the PowerAge. And I want, and I need, and I lust Def Leppard with Hysteria at number 2. Which can only mean it's so easy for us to pick the number 1 killer album for 1987. It is, of course, Guns N' Roses. Over to you, Dill.
Had to be, didn't it?
Well, thank you. I'll keep the award for that album tonight. So well done, GNR. That's awesome. Quickly, if you're interested, this is a RIA award. Now, as I'd already mentioned, this shifted quite a few copies. 18 million copies in the States alone. And this is an award that was awarded to Alan Niven, who was the band's manager at the time. And I picked this up in an auction a few years ago. And it sits proudly on my wall as one of the greatest albums ever produced. But also a good reminder of those halcyon days in the late 80s. So each time I look up at that, I have a wry smile to myself and remember what a brilliant year that was, but also what a great album it is. So
I mean, this top 5, when you're recognising there's 5 great records, but 3 of those records have sold an abundance, so many copies in one year.
Properly commercial in the real world.
Yeah. And there are other albums in the top 12 that didn't make the top 5 that also have bogged loads. So you think Aerosmith as an example, exactly. Millions of
metal was riding high back in those days.
It really was. Mega copies.
Okay, well that's our 5. Look, if you agree or disagree, please put in the comments. Please like, subscribe, hit the house bell, get involved. We've just uploaded some new videos to our Tales from the PowerAge live. There's some great close-ups of Blackberry Smoke at HMV Oxford Street. Check that out because they are amazing. And there's also some close-ups of Steve Harris's side project, British Lion, and they are also amazing as well. So if you want to have a couple of look at some of those videos, check them out, and please give that a subscriber too. So you can find us on Facebook if you want to see what's going on. If you want to have a chat with us, we're always on Twitter sharing bits and pieces and what we're up to. So that's at TFTPA. Please get involved in that. We're online at www.tavsfromthepowerage.com. And if you want some merchandise, you can get it from Redbubble. Now, if you see us at a gig, hopefully Gav's going to show us something. If you see us at a gig, you might be lucky, and we're going to share some of this to some of our friends that we'll be meeting up with soon. We've got these brilliant Tales from the PowerAge pin badges. So if you're interested...
and you might be lucky.
Yeah, buy us a drink. You might we'll buy you a drink, and you might be lucky.
You might get lucky.
Either way, put in the comments if you want a badge, let us know. Right, speak to you soon, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.